Hello and welcome to this class. Dear learners, today we are discussing the topic of infrastructure, which is part of the book Indian Economic Development, and I have divided this discussion in two parts. In the first part, I will be covering about what is infrastructure. We shall classify the infrastructure into two parts and then we shall see what is the status of infrastructure presently in India and how it fares in comparison with the neighboring countries. So let us start this discussion with what is infrastructure actually. So infrastructure is the support system on which depends the efficient working of a modern industrial economy. So basically any activity in an economy, I am here talking about the productive activities which are called the economic activities, their smooth functioning depend on the infrastructure, some basic facilities. These are the facilities which basically allows the productive activities to take place in an economy. So we can say that it provides basic supporting services in the main areas of industrial and agricultural production. Apart from that, it also facilitates domestic and foreign trade and commerce. So if we take examples of infrastructure, we can see that the number of roads, railway tracks, railway platforms, railway coaches, ports, airports, telecommunication facilities, all these are part of infrastructure. Apart from that, there are certain other facilities in an economy which play a crucial role in conduct of economic activities. One such is educational system, including schools and colleges, and another is health system, which includes the hospitals, the doctors. We shall discuss about this in detail very soon. Now, apart from that, sanitary system, including clean drinking water facilities, they are also part of the infrastructure. And one very important, which is in fact in the modern times is most important part of the infrastructure, is the banks, insurance companies, and other financial institutions. So, after having a brief idea of what is infrastructure, we can see the examples of infrastructure in the pictorial form. So, infrastructure provides supporting services for industrial and agricultural production. We need roads not only for industries but also for agriculture, for the transport of say fertilizers, for the transport of the produce of the farmers. We need airports, ports, railways, energy, utilities, education, healthcare, and social infrastructure for economic development. And we shall discuss about this very shortly, that what is the importance of infrastructure in economic growth of a country and overall economic development, because development is a term which has a broader scope as compared to economic growth. So let us have a look that how we classify infrastructure. Some people divide infrastructure into two categories, and the basic criteria of this classification is that the two parts are actually, one is affecting the economic activity directly and the other one is affecting the economic activity indirectly. So that is only the basic criteria for classifying. If we see that energy, transport, communication, these are some facilities which directly affect the conduct of economic activities in an economy. Every economic activity, particularly in the present times, need energy. We need energy to run machines, we need energy to run vehicles, we need energy for heating purposes, for domestic purposes. So we need energy for everything. So without energy, we can't imagine about the conduct of economic activities and economy. Now, transportation and communication, they are also very important. Economies which have good transportation facilities and good communication facility, they are expected to grow faster than other economies where these facilities are not available. Apart from that, there are some infrastructure like educational infrastructure, health, housing. They play a role in background. They basically prepare a ground for the economic activities. They indirectly affect economic activities. For example, if people are healthy, if people are educated in an economy, then they are bound to have higher productivity and they are bound to have a better contribution in the economic production. Similarly, housing and sanitation can be categorized into social infrastructure. So as we have seen that infrastructure can be classified into two parts, economic infrastructure and social infrastructure. We shall have a detailed discussion on these two. We shall be discussing energy in economic infrastructure, but that will be discussed in part 2. Also health from social infrastructure, that will be discussed in part 2 also. So in this part, basically we discuss about what is the importance of infrastructure, why it is so crucial for an economy, why we say that economies which have better infrastructure, they grow well, they grow faster than other economies. Modern agriculture, if we take example of agriculture, we can see that even agriculture has a very very important scope for infrastructure, for speedy and large scale transport of seeds, pesticides, fertilizers and the produce, using modern roadways, railways and shipping facilities. It plays a crucial role. In fact, if we want to export agricultural produce, then airports, then these ports, ships, they play a crucial role. In recent times, agriculture also depends on insurance and banking facilities. A lot of farmers these days are taking insurance for their crops. So in case because of any insects or because of any natural calamity, if their crop is damaged, then they need to have a protection against that. So banking facilities, insurance, all these infrastructure are also very crucial these days for agriculture. Apart from that, infrastructure contributes to economic development of a country, both by increasing the productivity of the factors of production, as I have already spoken about it, that health and education in an economy, they play a very important role, and improving the quality life of its people, like sanitation facilities, like better housing, better transport, they all are very important for the quality of life. Inadequate infrastructure can have multiple adverse effects. People compromise their health if there is bad infrastructure. For example, if people are living in crowded areas and where there is not good housing, not good transport, and very congested areas, there the morbidity rate is quite high. Morbidity basically means proneness to fall ill. So in congested areas, in areas where there is poor infrastructure, people may fall sick because of some waterborne diseases, because there is no clean water supply in the houses. In addition to this obvious linkage between water and sanitation and health, the quality of transport and communication infrastructure can affect access to health care. So we can summarize the importance of infrastructure in development here in these 5 major points. If we see that infrastructure is very important in overall development of an economy or a society, because it raises productivity of the people. A country may have a huge population, but if the population is not educated, if the population is not healthy, if the population is not skilled, they don't have latest modern skills to use techniques and machines, then in that case they will have very limited contribution to the production process. But if they are educated, they are healthy, they are skilled, then in that case their productivity will be quite high. They will lead to a higher physical output. Apart from that, infrastructure induces investment in countries where there are better roads, there are more airports, there is better power supply, there are better banking network, there is better communication facility. Investors are attracted to such economies, and foreign direct investment is higher in such economies. Infrastructure also enhances the size of the market. If there is better infrastructure, then there are larger production of goods and services, and larger production of goods and services means there are higher factor of there are higher factor incomes. Higher factor incomes ultimately then comes to the market in the form of purchase of more goods and services. So overall size of the market increases just because an economy have better infrastructure. It enhances ability to work. As I said, that healthy people, educated people, they have higher capacity to work. They can work for more hours, and in fact in the working hours they are actually producing more goods and services. They are more skilled, so they are not only laborious, they are basically using better machines, they are equipped to use machines and tools. Infrastructure also generates linkage production. like if there is more production in agriculture, then it leads to a better or higher demand for agricultural tools and equipments which are actually produced by the industrial sector. And if there is a better production in industrial sector, then it creates a higher demand for the services sector, because it creates demand for communication, it creates demand for more banking services. So there are linkage effects to it. So after discussion on the importance of infrastructure in development, let us have a look on the status of infrastructure in country. So development of infrastructure and economic development go hand in hand. Agriculture depends to a considerable extent on the adequate expansion and development of irrigation facilities. Industrial progress depends on the development of power and electricity generation, transport and communication. Obviously, if proper attention is not paid to the development of infrastructure, it is likely to act as a severe constraint of economic development. Now let us have a look at what is the present state of infrastructure in India and where do we lack. Uh, so we see that the infrastructure status is quite concerning in India. If we look at the data of census 2011, it shows that in rural India only 56% households have an electricity connection. Although government claims that recently we have electrified all the villages in India, but all the households are not electrified. If you see, 44% households are still without electricity connection. 43% still use kerosene. About 80% of the rural households use biofuels for cooking, which is quite bad for the health of the, particularly for the women, because they use this biofuels and kerosene, which produce a lot of smoke and is bad for the health of the women. Apart from that, tapped water availability is limited to only 31% rural households. Again, not very encouraging figure. About 69% of the population drink water from open sources such as wells, tanks, ponds, which is actually a cause of many infectious diseases, because the supply of treated water is very limited in India presently. This picture reveals the status that safe drinking water with Pakka house is still a distant dream in India. There are a lot of households, particularly in rural areas, where there are not Pakka houses, and there is not supply of safe drinking water. In fact, in urban areas are also a lot of people are living in shanties, in slums, in jhuggies, which don't have required essential basic amenities of the life. So people struggle daily in their life. So have a look now, a brief look on how India fares against its neighboring countries in terms of infrastructure. In column number 2, we can see that investment in infrastructure as a percentage of GDP. India spent 30% of its GDP on investment, which is quite low as compared to its neighbor like China and Indonesia. And it may be a reason that India is not still as developed as China is. So we need to certainly increase this percentage share of GDP that is invested. Apart from that, drinking water services are available for 94% people, sanitation services for merely 40% of the population, which is an alarming statistics, that only 40% people are availing sanitation services. Number of subscriber per 100 people are 87. So 87 is not a good, very encouraging figure. If we see, Hong Kong has 259 subscriptions per 100 people. So now if we come to consumption of energy, that is tons of milliliter tons of equivalent, that is 809, as compared to China. This is almost 1/4 of the figure for China. So we need to increase this intake of energy per person in India. So certainly there is a lot of ground that needs to be covered in India. Some economists have projected that India will become the third largest economy in world a few decades from now. For that to happen, India will have to boost its infrastructure investment. In any country, as the economy grows, income rises, the composition of infrastructure requirements changes significantly. For low income countries, basically infrastructure services like irrigation, transport, or power are more important. As economies mature and most of their basic consumption demands are met, the share of agriculture in the economy shrinks and more service related infrastructure is required. As it has already happened in India that the share of agriculture sector has shrunk, and it is now less than 15% share in GDP. This is why the share of power and telecommunication infrastructure is greater in high income countries, and if India keeps on growing economically, then certainly the share of services sector will keep on rising and the power consumption per person will keep on rising. So after all this discussion, you must be aware now what is infrastructure and what is its classification, and how India fares as compared to its neighbor countries. So that is all in this class, and in the second part we shall be discussing about the energy sector, which is part of the economic infrastructure, and health sector, which is part of the social infrastructure. So that is all from here. Thank you so much for attending this class.